They thought firing me would be funny. They thought stripping me of my job was the end of my story. They even laughed when security walked me out of the building, as if I was just another disposable name on a payroll sheet. But what they didn't know is that I carried something out with me, something they couldn't replace. And in the weeks that followed, I walked away with more than any of them ever could. Welcome back to Revenge with Sophia, where betrayal is never the final chapter. Before I share this story, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell icon, and stay with me until the very end, because the twist you'll hear at 12:03 p.m. on my last day was the exact moment everything turned in my favor. My name is Catherine Hayes. I was 34 years old when this happened. For 7 years, I worked at Eastbrook Consulting, a mid-sized firm in Boston that prided itself on sleek offices, aggressive pitches, and executives who thought wearing Italian suits made them gods. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't loud. But I was steady. I built client relationships. I delivered reports so detailed they became case studies. And I designed the framework for a system called Aurora, an internal tool that streamlined client onboarding. Aurora wasn't just a side project. It was my obsession. Nights, weekends, my fingerprints were on every line of code, every flowchart. It saved the company millions. And yet, when it came time for promotions, I was always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Why? Because my boss, Ryan, loved taking my work and presenting it as his. In April, I logged onto our Monday meeting only to see my own slides, color-coded, carefully designed, flashing on the projector while Ryan presented them as if they were his thoughts. He even fumbled through one of the transitions, and when the VP asked for clarification, he glanced at me across the room and said, "Catherine can probably explain it better, she knows the technical side." Technical side. That was his way of minimizing me, as though my work was wires and code, while his was strategy and vision. Then came the client dinners. I'd spend weeks preparing proposals, mapping budgets, calculating risk scenarios down to the decimal. And when the evening came, I'd sit at the far end of the table while Ryan charmed the clients with jokes and small talk. My name was never mentioned, but my spreadsheets were the foundation under his every word. At the office, the whispers grew. I'd walk into the break room and conversations would stall. One colleague muttered, "Why work late if she's just going to hand Ryan the gold?" Another laughed and said, "Yeah, but she'll never be a partner. She doesn't have the shine." I smiled politely, while stirring my coffee and pretended not to hear. But inside, the silence was deafening. Every smile from Ryan felt like theft. Every nod from upper management was a reminder that my fingerprints were being erased, one slide, one meeting, one stolen compliment at a time. By the time the quarterly all-hands came around, it was unbearable. Aurora, my system, my baby, was on the screen. Charts I had built, models I had tested, glowing under stage lights. And there was Ryan, in his tailored navy suit, spreading his arms like a conductor. "This was my vision," he said. The applause rolled through the auditorium like a wave. People I had mentored were clapping. Even the interns were whistling. I clapped too. My palms stung from the force of it. But inside, something was breaking. I went home that night and sat in the dark with my laptop open, watching Aurora hum to life. The interface blinked back at me like a child calling for its mother. They could take credit for the slides. They could steal my applause. But they couldn't see what I had hidden inside the code, the one piece of Aurora that only I knew how to unlock. June 14th, 11:15 a.m. My calendar pinged, meeting with HR. I knew before I even stood up. The air felt different, colleagues whispering as I passed. Ryan's office door cracked just enough for me to glimpse his grin as he leaned back in his chair. The HR office was a glass box, sterile, polished, a potted plant in the corner that looked more alive than the two people waiting for me. A woman from payroll. A man from HR I'd spoken to once during onboarding 7 years ago. They didn't look at me. They looked at their papers. The words fell in clipped, practice sentences. "We're restructuring. Your role is redundant. Your last day is today. No mention of Aurora. No mention of the millions in savings. Just corporate jargon dressed up as compassion. I tried to speak, to ask a single question, but before I could, Ryan appeared in the doorway. He didn't come in. He didn't need to. He leaned against the frame with his hands in his pockets, a smirk spreading across his face. Tough break, Catherine, he said softly, like he was savoring it. Then he walked away. At 12:03 p.m., security arrived. 2 guards I'd seen at the lobby desk 100 times now flanked me as I carried a cardboard box, my mug, my plant, my notebooks. The walk through the office was a gauntlet. Some faces turned away, pretending not to see. Others laughed. Small chuckles smothered behind coffee cups. But loud enough. Loud enough that I could hear them echoing in my head with every step. That was the moment I understood, I wasn't being fired for lack of value. I was being erased because I had too much of it. What they didn't know, what not a single person in that office could possibly imagine, was that Aurora was never truly theirs. See, when I built the system, I built it in layers. The part they saw, the polished dashboards, the neat charts, the colorful interfaces, was just the surface. A mask. The real Aurora, the engine that made it extraordinary, lived in a separate module. A heartbeat hidden in plain sight. I called it Core 7. 7,000 lines of code written at 2 a.m. in my apartment, coffee steaming beside me, my cat curled at my feet. I didn't build them for those hours. I didn't build it on their machines. Core 7 was mine, time-stamped, documented, watermarked with my digital signature. Without Core 7, Aurora was like a car without an engine. It looked impressive. The dashboard lit up. But turn the key, and nothing. The version they had was a mannequin. Useful for showrooms, not for survival. And when they escorted me out that June afternoon, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. They had fired me, but the lifeblood of their future? It was still pulsing safely in my pocket, on a silver flash drive. Not stolen. Not theirs to begin with. Mine. The cracks began quietly, like hairline fractures in glass. 2 weeks after I was fired, I got a call from an old client. Her voice was tight with frustration. Catherine, the system's breaking. Onboarding is chaos. Didn't you design Aurora? I swallowed hard. Yes, I said. But the version you're using is incomplete. They didn't let me finish it. Her sigh told me everything. That explains it. By the end of July, those cracks had widened. Aurora's dashboards were spitting out errors. Workflows froze midstream. Deadlines slipped. Clients who had once praised Eastbrook's efficiency were now threatening to walk. Inside the company, I heard through the grapevine, panic was spreading. Ryan was snapping at junior staff. Emergency meetings stacked up. People were staying past midnight, huddled in glass conference rooms, trying to fix a machine whose blueprint they didn't even have. But the best part? Aurora wasn't breaking by accident. It was doing exactly what it was designed to do without Core 7, stall, freeze, and grind under pressure. Like a body missing its heart. Meanwhile, my phone rang again. And again. Clients who trusted me, not the logo on the letterhead, wanted solutions. And I had them. I filed the paperwork for Aurora Consulting LLC. Not flashy. Not loud. Just mine. I didn't poach their clients. I didn't send a single email asking for business. But when word spread that Catherine Hayes had the real Aurora, my inbox filled overnight. While they were drowning in error reports and apology emails, I was signing contracts at my kitchen table, coffee steaming, pen steady. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I was indispensable to the right people. September came like a quiet verdict. I was running an errand downtown when I walked past the Eastbrook Tower. The glass facade reflected the late afternoon sky like a mirror showing someone else's life. For a moment I considered keeping walking. Anonymity is a kind of luxury, but curiosity pulled me toward the lobby. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows I could see them, the same faces that had watched me leave in June. They were still there, lit by fluorescent glare and the blue glow of monitors, hunched over conference tables like men trying to piece together a map they'd never drawn. Ryan sat at the head of one table, his suit rumpled, tie loose, an image I'd never thought I'd see. He was leaning over a spreadsheet, mouth pressed into a thin line. Beside him, Claire from Ops had her hands over her face like a small child trying to hold back a cry. The projector screen behind them cycled error logs in red: timeout, core module missing, process halted, dependency not found. The words looked like bleeding. A junior analyst, the one who used to make overly casual jokes at the copier, was on the phone with a client, voice wobbling. "We're working on a fix, we don't have a timeline yet." His hand shook as he passed a printout to Ryan, who ran a hand through his hair, the motion small and frantic. No triumphant shouts. No dramatic collapse, just the slow, grinding erosion of competence. That's worse, I thought. It's the kind of humiliation that turns swagger into silence. I stood there for a long minute, the lobby's air-conditioned cool pressing against my face. A barista from the streetside cafe brought me a paper cup and I watched Ryan look up as if sensing eyes on him. He didn't see me. He couldn't, the glass made me a ghost on the other side. And then the thing that felt almost holy happened. A client I'd worked with, the healthcare group that had trusted my iterations, walked into the lobby. She paused as she saw the scene, then met my eye. Her look wasn't triumph. It was recognition. A hand reached for mine and squeezed, a silent thank you across the glass. I could have gone inside and given a speech. I could have staged a reveal. But revenge never needed a stage. It was, in that moment, a quiet unspooling of truth. Their confidence didn't snap like a brittle twig, it dissolved like paper in rain. They were left holding meeting notes while I held contracts. As I turned away, I felt something settle in my chest, not glee, not malice, but a deep and almost disorienting peace. They had wanted to make me small, to make my work invisible. Instead, they'd handed me the very leverage I needed, the proof of authorship, the client trust, and the moral clarity to build again. Later that week, the press release hit their inbox. Eastbrook Consulting reported a multi-client slowdown, integration issues delayed projected savings by 60%. Internally, the rumor mill began to spin a new tale, one where senior leadership had miscalculated. For the first time, the name Catherine Hayes started showing up in polite, surprised conversation around town, but not as the woman who had been escorted out, as the woman clients called when the lights flickered. I didn't gloat. I wrote a simple email to a former teammate: "If you need support while they sort this out, I'm available." No hard feelings. One by one, people reached out, not with mocking laughter, but with requests for help, for clarifications, for the knowledge only I had. The reveal wasn't a single dramatic moment so much as a series of quiet admissions. Calls that used to go unanswered now pinged my phone. Meetings once closed to me suddenly had empty chairs with notes asking for my input. It was the slow correction of a ledger, the world rebalancing because what had been taken was finally acknowledged. Walking home that night, the city lights felt warmer. My step was lighter. The office building receded in the rearview as a small, glass box full of echoes. I thought of the box I'd carried out in June, a mug, a plant, a few notebooks, and realized how small it had been compared to everything I'd kept, my integrity, my work, and the quiet patience to let truth do its work. They laughed when I got fired. They thought humiliation would break me. But walking out of that building wasn't the end. It was the reset. Today, I work on my terms. I take contracts I believe in. I tuck Jaden, yes, by then I had a baby boy of my own, into bed at 8 p.m. without feeling guilty for skipping a client dinner. And the people who once laughed? They taught me a lesson they never intended, that dignity, ownership, and peace are worth more than applause in glass offices. So if you're listening now, remember this: sometimes losing their world is the only way to build your own. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If you believe dignity is the best revenge, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And tell me in the comments, have you ever walked away from a place that didn't deserve you, only to find something better?